Hello everyone, my name's Iman. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to be tackling a practice problem set that relates to our lecture on nomenclature. Let's go ahead and get started with the first problem. Problem number 1 says, which of the following lists the correct common names for ethanol, methanol, and ethanol respectively? During lecture, we went over these structures and we covered their IUPAC names and their common names. So let's go ahead and review, starting off with ethanol. The common name for this is acetaldehyde. For methanol, the common name is formaldehyde. And for ethanol, the common name is ethyl alcohol. That makes the correct answer for problem 1, answer choice A. Let's tackle problem 2 next. This problem says, which of the following are considered terminal functional groups? Statement 1 says aldehydes, statement 2 says ketones, and statement 3 says carboxylic acids. Now, a terminal functional group is one that has to be located at the end of a carbon chain. This is because of how the group is structured and how it bonds to the carbon chain. Let's start with discussing aldehydes. Aldehydes are terminal functional groups because the carbonyl group in an aldehyde is always bonded to a hydrogen atom on one side. And this setup forces the aldehyde to be at the end of the chain since hydrogen can only make one bond. What about ketones? Ketones, on the other hand, are not terminal functional groups. The carbonyl group in a ketone is always sandwiched between two carbon atoms. And because of this, ketones are always found somewhere in the middle of a chain and not at the end. Finally, let's discuss carboxylic acids. Carboxylic acids are, in fact, terminal functional groups. The carboxyl group includes both a carbonyl group and a hydroxyl group bonded to the same carbon. This structure can only occur at the end of a chain because the carboxyl carbon can only make one more bond, which connects it to the rest of the molecule. So based on this explanation, the correct answer is going to include aldehydes and carboxylic acids, which are statements 1 and 3, making the correct answer for problem 2, answer choice C. Beautiful. Problem 3 says, if all prefixes were dropped, what would be the name of the parent root of this molecule? This question is essentially an elaborate way of asking which functional group takes priority. This molecule contains two functional groups, a carboxylic acid and an aldehyde. When we're deciding the parent root of a molecule, we're going to base that on the highest priority functional group that's present. Between these two groups, the carboxylic acid has the highest priority according to IUPAC naming rules. Carboxylic acids always dominate the naming of the molecule when they're present, and that means that the parent root must reflect the carboxylic acid. In this case, the correct answer is propanoic acid because the structure is based on a 3-carbon chain with the carboxylic acid group as the defining feature. Now, if we were to name this fully, the aldehyde would be treated as a substituent, and we would use a prefix like oxo if included. But for determining the parent root, which is what this problem is asking, it's all about the highest priority group, in this case, the carboxylic acid. Let's move on to problem 4. Problem 4 says, what is the highest priority functional group in this molecule? Looking at the structure, we see that it contains 2 carbonyl groups connected by an oxygen atom. This specific arrangement is characteristic of an anhydride, which is a functional group formed by the dehydration of two carboxylic acids. And it is, in fact, the highest priority functional group that is present in this molecule. That makes the correct answer for problem 4, answer choice A. Problem 5 says, the IUPAC name for the following structure ends in what suffix? To determine the correct suffix, we need to identify the highest priority functional group present in the molecule because it determines the name's ending. In this structure, we observe several functional groups. We have a carboxylic acid. We have our hydroxyl or alcohol group. We also have a triple bond and a double bond. Looking at our priority list, carboxylic acids have the highest priority and alkanes have the lowest priority. Since this molecule contains a carboxylic acid, that's going to be our highest priority functional group that's present, and that means the molecule will end with the suffix oic acid. Therefore, the correct answer is C. Let's move on to problem 6. Problem 6 says, which of the two possibilities below correctly numbers the carbon backbone of this molecule? The first priority when numbering a molecule is to ensure we are numbering the longest carbon chain. In numbering scheme 1, the chain includes 6 carbons, which represents the longest possible continuous chain in this structure. However, in numbering scheme 2, the chain only includes 5 carbons, which is shorter, and it does not meet the requirement of identifying the longest chain. Because scheme 1 identifies the 6 carbon backbone, it's already the correct choice based on the first rule of nomenclature. Always select the longest carbon chain as the parent chain. That means that the correct answer for problem 6 is A. Problem 7 says, what is the proper structure for 2,3-dihydroxybutane acid, also known as tartaric acid? This name tells us a lot of important details about the molecule. Let's start with the parent name, butane acid. This tells us that the parent chain has 4 carbons, and there are 2 carboxylic acid functional groups, one at each end of the chain. Then 2,3-dihydroxy tells us that there are 2 hydroxyl groups. One of them is attached to the second carbon in the chain, and the other one is attached at the third carbon of the chain. Keeping that in mind, we can begin to draw it out and try to align it with the answer choices we're provided. So we're going to start by drawing a 4-carbon chain. Then at each end, we're going to have a carboxylic acid. And then we're going to have 2 hydroxyl groups, one at carbon 2, and then another hydroxyl group at carbon 3. And when we draw it out in this manner, we see that this best aligns with answer choice B. So the correct answer for problem 7 is B. Problem 8 says, the common names for the aldehydes and carboxylic acids that contain only 1 carbon start with which prefix? Is it para, form, meth, or acete? The correct prefix for aldehydes and carboxylic acids with just 1 carbon atom is form. For example, formaldehyde is the common name for methanol, which is the simplest aldehyde with just 1 carbon atom. Similarly, formic acid is the common name for methanoic acid, and that is the simplest carboxylic acid with just 1 carbon atom. The correct answer for 8 is B. Problem 9 says, what is the IUPAC name for the following structure? In order to name the structure, we're going to follow our 5 steps for naming. Step 1, select the parent chain. This is the longest carbon chain. Step 2, number the chain. Step 3, name the substituents. Step 4, assign a number to each substituent. And then step 5, complete the name. The first step is to identify the longest continuous carbon chain. In this case, the longest chain has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 carbons. So the parent chain is heptane. The second step is to number the chain. We number the parent chain to give the substituents the lowest possible numbers. If we start numbering from the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, our substituents are at carbons 3 and 6. If we number the chain starting from the right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, our substituents are at carbons 2 and 5. Since this second option gives us smaller numbers, we're going to number the chain from right to left. So we're going to go ahead and erase this and write it in the correct form. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now we can move into step 3, name the substituents. The substituents are methyl groups located at carbons 2 and 5. Now we can move into step 4, assign numbers to the substituents. We said that both of our substituents are methyl groups and they are at positions 2 and 5. So we can write 2,5-dimethyl. And our last and final step is to complete the name. We're going to combine the substituent names and positions with the parent chain. And when we do that, we get 2,5-dimethylheptane. And that best aligns with answer choice A. Moving on to problem 10. Problem 10 says, what is the IUPAC name for the following structure? We're going to follow the same exact steps in problem 10 as we did in problem 9. The first step is identifying the longest continuous chain of carbons. In this structure, the longest chain has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 carbons, and that makes the parent chain hexane. In step 2, we want to number the chain. We want to number the carbon chain in a way that ensures that the substituents have the lowest possible numbers. If we start numbering from the left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, our substituents are located at 2, 4, 5, and 5. But if we number the chain going from right to left, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, our substituents are at 2, 2, 3, and 5. This second way of numbering gives us smaller values for the positions of our substituents. So the correct way to number this is going from right to left. We're going to erase and write it in the correct way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So our substituents are at 2, 2, 3, and 5. Step 3 is to then identify and name the substituents. At carbon 2, we have 2 methyl groups. At carbon 3, we have an ethyl group. And then at carbon 5, we have another methyl group. Step 4 tells us to assign a number to each substituent. At carbon 2 and at carbon 5, we have a bunch of methyl substituents. So we're going to write those together. 2, 2, 5, trimethyl. Then we have an ethyl group at carbon 3. We can move into our last and final step now, which tells us to complete the name. When we are completing the name, we're going to be piecing together the substituents and their positions, and these should be written in alphabetical order, and that's then going to be followed by the parent chain name. When we are putting things in alphabetical order, we do not consider any sort of prefixes like di, tri, tetra, so on and so forth. So what we're really comparing here when we want to put things in alphabetical order is the M in methyl and the E in ethyl. E obviously comes before M. So the beginning part of our name for this molecule is going to be 3-ethyl. Then we can follow this with 2, 2, 5, trimethyl. And then we slap on our parent name, hexane. So the correct name is 3-ethyl 2,2,5-trimethyl hexane. The correct answer for problem 10 is D. Problem 11 says, the IUPAC name for the following structure starts with what prefix? In order to solve this problem, we need to name this molecule. And to do that, we're going to follow our naming steps. Step 1 is to identify the parent chain. We are looking for the longest continuous carbon chain in this structure. That is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons long, making the parent chain butane. However, there is a hydroxyl group present. So the parent name changes from butane to 2-butanol. This is to indicate both the hydroxyl group and its position on carbon 2. Now that we have the parent name, we can worry ourselves with the substituents. There is only one substituent at carbon 2, and it is a methyl group. So we write 2-methyl, 2-butanol. That is the name of this molecule. This question asks us, the IUPAC name for the following structure starts with what prefix? That prefix is 2-methyl, which means that the correct answer for problem 11 is B. Problem 12 says, NADH is a coenzyme that releases high-energy electrons into the electron transport chain. It is known as nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide or diphosphopiridine nucleotide. What functional groups exist in this molecule? Phosphate, amide, and hydride. Well, the name tells us everything we need to know. The suffix amide in nicotinamide indicates that this compound contains an amide functional group. In addition, the prefix diphospho indicates that there are 2 phosphate groups as well. And so the correct answer here is going to be C. NADH has a phosphate functional group and an amide functional group. Beautiful. Let's move on to problem 13. Problem 13 says pyruvic acid, one of the end products of glycolysis, is commonly called acetylformic acid. Based on its common name, the structure of pyruvic acid must be blank. To figure this out, let's focus on the common name acetylformic acid and what it tells us about the structure of pyruvic acid. The name is a clue. Acetyl refers to a 2-carbon group with a carbonyl attached to it, and formic acid refers to a carboxylic acid functional group. When you combine these two parts, you get a molecule with a carbonyl group directly attached to a carboxylic acid. Looking at the options, structure A matches this description perfectly. It has a carbonyl group on the second carbon and a carboxylic acid group on the first carbon. The other options don't fit because they either lack the correct functional groups or they have entirely different structures. So the correct answer is A. Problem 14 says, which of the following are common names for carboxylic acid derivatives? 1 says acetic anhydride, 2 says formic acid, 3 says methyl formate. Let's analyze each option carefully, starting with acetic anhydride. This is a derivative of acetic acid, and it falls into the category of anhydrides, which are formed by removing water from 2 carboxylic acid molecules. It is indeed a carboxylic acid derivative. So statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 says formic acid. While formic acid is a carboxylic acid, it's not a derivative. It is the parent acid itself, so it does not belong to the category of derivatives. Finally, we have methyl formate. This is an ester derived from formic acid, where the hydrogen in the carboxylic acid group has been replaced by a methyl group. Esters are carboxylic acid derivatives, so this statement is correct. Statements 1 and 3 are both correct, so the answer for problem 14 is B. Now we can tackle our last and final problem. Problem 15 says, consider the name 2,3-diethylpentane. Based on the structure implied by this name, the correct IUPAC name for this molecule is blank. In order to solve this problem, we need to first draw out this molecule. The name 2,3-diethylpentane suggests that the parent chain is pentane. This is a carbon chain with 5 carbons. And then we're told that there are 2 ethyl groups attached to carbon 2 and to carbon 3. However, when we build the structure based on this name, we notice something important. There's a possibility of a longer chain. Including one of the ethyl groups as part of the main chain gives us a 6-carbon chain instead of 5. That means that the parent chain for this molecule is actually hexane, not pentane. Now that we know that, we can move into the other steps for naming. Step 2 is to number the chain. We can number the chain one of 2 ways. We can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When we number it in this way, we have a substituent at 3 and a substituent at 4. The substituent at 3 is methyl, and the substituent at 4 is ethyl. If we number it in the opposite way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, we notice that we have a substituent at position 3 and at position 4. At position 3, we now have the ethyl, and at position 4, we now have the methyl. So here's where a tie-breaking rule comes into play. If there is a tie in the numbering choices, you choose the one with the substituent that comes first alphabetically. So we want ethyl to have the lower number because E comes before M. So the correct numbering scheme for this molecule is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in this order. And that means at 3, we have our ethyl group. And at carbon 4, we have our methyl group. Now that we know how many substituents we have and their positions, and we've also corrected the parent chain name, we can put this together to get the correct IUPAC name for this molecule. First, we place our substituents in alphabetical order. 3-ethyl, 4-methyl, and then we add our parent chain name hexane. The correct IUPAC name for this molecule is 3-ethyl, 4-methyl hexane. C is the correct answer for problem 15. And with that, we have completed this practice problem set. Please let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns down below. Other than that, good luck, happy studying, and have a beautiful, beautiful day, future doctors.